have to refuel, so he'll be...
You want to get the...
Yeah, we need to. I think that's going to be the tradition, I think, no? People will have to guess what we're drinking. I knew this would happen.
I was ready, you were not.
Fuck. I got it. What a perfect way to kick off a new podcast episode. We've been so consistent with the episodes and the uploads, you know. I think our last one was. You wanna guess? You wanna guess what was the title of our last podcast?
I don't know, spilling stuff on yourself?
No, the title, I think, of our last podcast, which was, I think, 37 years ago.
It only felt like 36 years ago. Come on.
It was Our Engine is Ready for Gameplay. That was the...
You can't actually see my face, but I'm making a face.
It's not an intervention. It's just funny to me because it's the way I also knew when we were recording it that it was things were going to change. By your level of excitement when we started the project and I told you, hey, you want to build your own engine? And you were like, fuck yeah.
I still feel like that, by the way. Feel like, fuck yeah. The engine has gone through several iterations.
Yeah. So
one of them was a very big refactoring.
I also went through several iterations doing those iterations.
I think we all went through several iterations. The Amir that is writing the engine today is definitely not the Amir that started this.
We replaced him 3 times.
I think I started with really big ideas, which was good. One of the things I really enjoyed was trying to implement those big ideas. And I wouldn't say completely successful.
Can you give an example? What do you mean by a big idea?
I think the ECS system was a big idea. Like the entity component system is a big idea. The version that we have right now, it's a much leaner version, which isn't as generalized as it was.
What does the entity component system do?
Allow us to create the concept of an entity, which is basically just an ID or a tag, and then map different components. The big difference now is that the entities and the components that we have, they're less generic. They're more conceptualized into what Born to Build needs, which makes it a lot easier to control. We stopped having generic entities and we started having things like player. We have a game entity, which is the player's camera rig, which is attached to the player's entity. We have a game entity, which is called the first-person rig. So instead of having something which is entity, we have the concept of a player, which has different combinations of game rigs. Some of them are for cameras, some of them are for the first-person controls that it needs. And now we're working on the equipment rig, which is another game object that actually has all of the weapons and equipment that the player might have in the game. And all of those things, they're not floating in the air. They're actually mapped to the concept of a player, which lives outside of the ECS. Part of making things leaner and more focused, we have a battle scene, which is the concept of a scene in the game, but it is geared specifically for loading a voxel map. It's generated from a VXL file, like a voxel map, and it has information attached to it, which is our information, our Born to Build scene. So we have a battle scene, and we're gonna have a main menu scene. This is not a generic engine. There's an old joke, an old programming joke, and I must admit I fell for it in the beginning of this project, is you teach a man a game engine, how to use a game engine, and he'll make you a game. If you teach a man how to write a game engine, then he'll never produce anything ever again. Because it's an endless pit. It's very easy to fall into all sorts of different holes along the way. There's so much in a game engine that I wanted and we needed. I was torn in so many different ways. I thought the solution for that would be making things generic. In the end, part of my growing up through this project is actually understanding that there's a room for things that are generic, but it's much better to make things focused. So we have Born to Build, we know what the game is. Let's make the engine or the framework work towards that, and then extrapolate when we need.
So if I understand correctly, when you say generic, you mean you approached it as a game engine, multi-purpose, instead of creating something that's more, I would say, lean or focused on the game we're trying to make right now, instead of encompassing all possible games, right?
Yeah, so I think a really good example is actually veering off for a second from a player to the voxels themselves. Whereas before I really struggled with trying to figure out how to render out the voxels in a generic way that would work with the generic ECS, and how to read those voxels, how to find the voxel map. The way that the ECS was set up, we would need to create a component called voxel map, and then the engine, the system that's connected to a scene would need to figure out where that voxel map is in memory, and then it would read that. But there's only one. We don't actually have 10 different voxel maps. We don't need 10 different voxel maps. And yet the system or the framework that I built supported that. But with that support comes, you pay with performance, you pay with a system that's more complex to try and reason about. Because before, if we had a scene, what is a scene with a battle scene? The scene would need to have a component or a game object with a component called voxel map. What happens if you delete that? So, because you could, like a designer could technically delete that.
Or a player, right? Or you mean the...
No, a player couldn't delete that.
Oh, not the map, the voxel itself.
This is part of the editor. The voxel engine itself is responsible for managing all of the voxels. It doesn't need to find a scene object. It generates its own voxels, it knows how to deal with it, and it gives you the abilities to remove voxels. As you can see now, we can remove voxels, we can add voxels. Something we couldn't do before because it was getting really complicated to try and figure out how to control all of those things. But now that you've centralized it, which from a software engineering point of view, sometimes it's a good thing to centralize, sometimes distributed systems are better. I think in this case, it's much easier to reason and control when it's a centralized location. We have the same thing for a physics engine. We have the Salt engine.physics engine. That's responsible for the physics in the battle scene. And that's it. We don't need anything that's generic. Like, it knows it comes with its own set of components and entities, and when you generate those components and entities, it's generated through the physics engine, and so the physics engine doesn't need to find them. It's the one responsible for them.
You know, that's what usually happens, and it's okay. As you can notice, we immediately dive into the technical stuff, which is good, and it's good. We'll circle back to it. Just, we discussed a little bit about the entity component system, how that was a big thing that you needed to tackle. It's important for them to understand that usually the difficulty for me in managing these projects and or project like Born to Build and giving deadlines is that I think even if I was a programmer, it would still be hard for me to understand and gauge a deadline, because it was also for you completely, I think, maybe not completely, but it was new territory. Because I remember when we talked about it I listened to the previous podcast, and it was before the refactoring, of course, and we'll get to that part. But I think for me, like you said, there was a shift in perspective that you had to do eventually, because while we can spend forever developing the game engine, make it generic, it's not the product that's supposed to help us make the studio at the end of the day. I mean, it definitely is, because it's back there, it's behind everything, and it doesn't mean we can't add stuff to it. But you have to start from like a very simple step, I'm saying simple, yeah, from a more, let's say, lean and dedicated engine, and then expand the more features maybe we'll want to add in the future. You know what I mean? So for me, it was very difficult to gauge like how close are we to gameplay, because I always said it feels like Groundhog Day, that every week it's, next week it's gameplay, next week it's gameplay, next week it's gameplay. If you noticed, I kind of also disappeared from Discord because I was like, I can't keep telling people it's soon. It's going to be ready when it's ready, because again, I'll prefix this, we're doing this once a week. So it's not only for you to get back once a week and
sometimes not even that. If we have like any unforeseen circumstances, which we do. I have kids, I have a crazy dog. I'm married. Sometimes things happen. You get sick, your spouse gets sick, your kids get sick, and or work kicks your ass, and then you can't do it, and we lose the only day of development we have.
But notice, here's the scary thing, and I heard it from I think it was Hugo Martin, who developed the new Dune. He said on one of their dev talks that he's almost uncomfortable saying how quickly the game coalesced into what Doom 2016 was close to release, like how much work was, because they were working on the engine, they scrapped the original version of Doom 4. So I think it was like it was a span of like 8 months that they cobbled together, like the levels, the story, the design, everything just came together. And now I feel that something similar has happened in the last few months. It was for me, it felt almost like a year or a year and a half, putting other issues aside, waiting, for something to happen. Then something clicked, and suddenly it feels like it was so much pre-production. And then suddenly you hit the ground running, and it happens so quickly. I mean, we now have how many builds per session we're doing? 2 to 3 builds per...
Well, we try to do at least one every week. It depending...
Having no builds for a year and a half, and then suddenly having 2 every week?
Yeah, I don't know if the build channel is open for everyone, but we do at least one build every week, sometimes 2 or 3, because unfortunately I have bugs, so I need to fix. But I want to tackle the concept of deadlines. So I've worked in the software industry for the last 15 years professionally. I finished uni in 2010. Programmers in general are terrible at estimating time. All project estimations are a big fat lie. People just don't want to admit it. When you make a game, you don't actually have a point of reference. Even the stuff that is similar to what you're doing, it's not the same. You can try to project, but most of the time we miss. Sometimes we miss by a few weeks. Sometimes I've seen projects that miss by a few years. It's very difficult. I took my sweet time, and I could have done it faster. And in retrospect, everything's easier. So in retrospect, I can say, I could have done that better. But like everything in life, you have to learn your lessons. And we've got to the point where we can now start running on features of the game. I've basically said, okay, enough with the engine. The engine has to serve Born to Build, not the other way around. And that's where we ended up here.
I think it's also important to note that put all these things into consideration when you have other people on the team. For me, I think it came close to a point where we can't do this anymore. We can't, not because there's any real external pressure, you know what I mean? I mean, we're not doing pre-orders, we didn't do a Kickstarter campaign, but it's still the fact that we have the passion for this game and we want to make it, it reached a point where we're like, listen, we just can't do this anymore. And I think that, again, we're sitting in my place every week, and we have been consistent ever since COVID. We're still doing this. Yeah. So passion and insanity aside, my job eventually, and I understood that, I was always afraid to tap on your shoulder and say, listen, man, because, I know I don't know how to program, but I know exactly how complicated it is. I've seen other documentaries about game development. I know what it's like to develop these tools, and you have to have the passion and the head for it. But there's also a need to understand that even beyond you, the players that we want to have, just for the team itself, having a engine that might not be as perfect as you maybe imagined, but having a product that we can play test, and you can see what it did for us. I mean, you saw that we were still riding this wave of creativity and iterations, and I'm doing game design, and I'm back doing the marketing stuff, and here we're recording this now because it feels now for me it got back to being tangible. I can almost taste it. You know what I mean? And that's a big deal, especially with a small team. Let's take this into account. Let's say I would have raised money for this project. Let's say we would have even worked full time on this. I think it would have still taken us a long time. So what would have happened? We would have hired a whole team and wait for you and maybe another programmer to finish it.
Having more people doesn't necessarily make things quicker. I mean, does this
full time does though, because we've done that before.
Full time definitely does. Losing context and then getting back into it.
So I'm going to ask you a difficult question because I have no idea how you will answer it.
All right.
Do you feel somewhere in your vision for this engine, was there anything major, in the way you imagine it should be, that just didn't happen?
No. I'm very not married to my code. I'm quite happy to delete code and change it. I wish I had given up the idea of making it more generic, and I love writing code. So it's very easy for me to write code and just to design code, which I want, all of these tools and ideas, and kind of lose sight of the product. So I really need someone to sit beside me and focus me on the product. And I kind of realized that, I think maybe 8 months ago, when we started really picking up the pace. Yeah. You haven't seen it, but I've cannibalized as much as I could so we can get something that's playable as fast as possible.
That's the
Yeah.
decoupling you told me about?
Well, it decoupled from some things. It actually coupled harder to other things, which at some point I will fix, but it's working right now, and that's the only thing that matters. The only thing that matters at the moment is having the game up and running. Salt as an engine is more of a framework, which it's not entirely geared towards Born to Build, but it is geared towards voxels and physics in the same way that Born to Build is going to need. You can make other games with it. You'll need a programmer, obviously. But they're going to have to be voxel games, and at the moment they're going to have like specific map sizes and stuff like that. But you can have other games. It doesn't even have to be a first-person perspective. You can easily add a third person.
So you don't feel that there was something left on the cutting room floor in a way?
No, I have no regrets. My only regret is not doing this quicker and sooner.
So if we would have started the game now, from scratch, yeah.
Can we?
No. If we would have started this project now with what you know, I'm just curious, how would you approach it?
I'd write the game first. I wouldn't try to make an engine. I'd write the game first. I wouldn't try to start from something bigger.
Also for us, we didn't know when we told you, hey, here's the game, here's Ace of Spades. Played it a little bit, you understood what it was about. I gave you a very, very relatively short feature list for what the game needs to be. So of course there's complicated, it's short, but still the voxels, handling it in real time, preparing it for multiplayer, all that kind of stuff, it's still complicated. But we knew what the game needs to be, but we had no idea what the scope of the tech and how much work that will take from you, because when you are, let's go back to like monogame. For me, it's somewhere back there, like for 15 years ago when we stopped using monogame. Like, for example, that's the first, like, for me in my head, the first pivot I remember you saying, listen, this won't work.
I think monogame didn't work specifically because I didn't like, and I still don't really like their content pipeline. I've used monogame, and I'm using monogames in some like other projects. It would need more work towards understanding monogame than understanding the voxel tech, and I wanted to write our own stuff. I wanted to have something more deeply ingrained into our company's DNA. Monogame is great. Sure. I love monogame. Monogame is more geared towards solo dev or one or couple of developers that are developers, and they integrate the asset content pipeline into the building of the actual game. You can do it otherwise, and back then it was less common. Nowadays they did come out with a better content editor, which is a separate application for editing the content. It's still not there. The editor pipeline that we have in Born to Build and in Salt is better, in my opinion, than the monogame one because it is more tightly integrated into the runtime. It's separate, but it is more tightly integrated. I really wanted to have that experience. It's much closer to Unity, and from Unity's perspective, by the way, I have my gripes with Unity. I have my complaints about Unity. Familiarity breeds contempt, and Unity is a great engine. And stupid like business decisions aside, the engine itself is a really versatile, really solid piece of technology. It's very complicated. Where it shines, in my point of view, beyond the building to different platforms, is really the way that they handle assets and content, and the way how it's tightly integrated and so nicely integrated into the editing and runtime experience of the editor. Monogame's not there. I really wanted that experience. We're using IMGUI. Unity uses it too. Most of the industry, they actually use IMGUI, and it's great. I had to fix some stuff here and there, obviously, to match up to the latest releases, but it's a really positive experience.
Remember, I think back in the day, you made a version that I was jumping. I was in Normandy, the map. You remember when we were loading it without the colors, that it was like this brown thing? So explain to somebody who saw, like last time, that I was jumping in the map. Something happened. The second you added the physics, I think it's time to talk about the octree, because I'm pretty sure that's where things kind of became really...
So we can talk about the octree. I'm calling it a vox tree at this point.
And I write that's where things kind of, because we were progressing, we were starting to add the physics, we even loaded some models, I showed them the previews. Then I remember we had the conversation, I told you, all right, so now that we're jumping around, I need the option to dig through the voxels, and if you shoot that voxel at the edge of the map, you need to be able to destroy it. So you're like, oh, Okay, so now I need to figure out a way how to compress these close to 17 million voxels and handle it in a way that,
Yeah, so when you look before, the physics wasn't a physics engine. It was basically a bunch of very loose systems which did one thing, and they did it well, but they didn't have coherency. And when we wanted to introduce an octree, like, there was no way to actually understand what the scene looks like, because everything was a part of the ECS components. It took so long to find all components every frame. Once we added the physics, because of the way that because it was so generalized, it was so generic, trying to find specific elements in the scene started costing us a lot of performance. We're managing to run it when you do VSync at 60 frames per second, at 60 FPS, no matter what. It's very consistent.
On my PC, it's close to, on this resolution, which is a 40-inch monitor, which is 5120 on 2160.
We do not support that resolution. I'm just saying that's a very weird resolution.
But I'm running it at close to 1000 FPS.
We will need to do some more performance testing once we're out.
Sure, for the next game.
No. With people will complain. We'll have to figure out what's the minimum specs.
When people complain, we'll fix it. All right. We'll give people something to complain about first.
What happened is the minute we needed to do something heavy, some really heavy lifting, the game ground to a halt. We ended up with 10, 15 frames per second.
Yeah.
And to untangle that made me realize that I have to focus things. I have to make things specific and not generic. We have a physics engine, we have a voxel engine. They can talk to each other because they know that they exist. They don't need to pretend. The voxel engine and the physics engine don't need to pretend that the voxels don't exist. Once I did that, there's an octree specifically within the voxel engine, which is the voxel engine is responsible for it, and there is a physics octree for the scene, for the dynamic objects, because they change much more often than the voxels themselves. So there's also a dynamic tree that segments space for dynamic objects, and now they can talk to each other.
So if I translate it into layman terms from to my orc level of understanding, is that when you move across the map, and I'll show it now, if I move now across like a strip of terrain, the engine behind the scenes, and I'm not gonna go into like the frame generation, all that, but the engine behind the scenes is tracking where I am, and it's generating let's call it the collision around me, right? There's like a certain area, generates the floor beneath you in a way, you know what I mean?
It doesn't generate the floor beneath you. What it does, it knows exactly where you are, and once it knows where you are, it easily can take the voxel engine to ask for, okay, I'm here, tell me what neighbors am I looking at, and then tell me whether some of those neighbors have a voxel in them that I should collide with or not. When I have a collision with that, I'm passing that collision to the physics, and the physics can decide what to do with it. So even that is a bit too generic for my liking, and at some point the code's going to get a bit messy, and we're going to fix it, but not now.
Players are not going to be playing the code, it's fine.
Exactly, so...
They don't see the tear rolling down your face when you say that. It's fine for now.
No.
Fine for now.
It's okay. I'm not horrified by it. It needs to work. I'm much happier with something working, and for you guys to be happy. My job is to make you happy, and you're happy when you have things to script and a game to play, and that's the important thing. Everything else, as long as I can. If I need to refactor stuff, I'll refactor underneath, and it won't break the API level.
Yeah.
Because the API is fairly simple and it's fairly set in stone.
So you're fine with the way that it is. It's not a compromised division for what you had. It's just more of a, let's call it...
I think the word compromise is kind of weird because I haven't compromised. I've developed it, and it's what it is right now. Get it done and then get it perfect. So we're in the get it done phase. At some point we'll get it looking better. The code will definitely need at some point another sort of TLC. At the moment it does what it needs to do, and that's I want to have that code running. I want the game running.
And I think that it really, and there's a timeline. I think I might try and have it live when the demo goes up. Yeah, I haven't seen this. I wanted to surprise this with you. So we're gonna just go over it, and
2020.
I need you to correct me if I'm doing something wrong. Yeah, here. So if I remember correctly, 2020 we started the project. Yeah, COVID happens and we all got fired, and me and a friend started playing Ace of Spades. Then we decided very early on, we started talking to you mid 2020. It's like, should we use Unity for this? You and me had a project previously, and we worked on Unity when it was very early, before there was a 2D game, before there was 2D really support for it. Then I remember you saying, okay, so we're not going to use Unity for this. We should try our own thing. So I wrote coding and optimism. Surely we can do this in like 2 and 3 years. Yeah. So this was like 2020. Then in 2021, I started doing the 3D assets. I designed the grunt, and then I decided, all right, so we have assets. I modeled all the weapons. I started doing animations. So I opened the YouTube channel and started getting the word out, doing the first devlog and all that stuff. Then we started some R&D. Again, I'm very general in all this. Yeah, it's hard for me to remember also, but understanding how to handle the voxels. Then 2022. I remember the custom map support came in very early. I think it's one of the first things that I remember just working. We started to add the 3D models. There's even one of the, I think it's on Heyman's devlog, that we show models in the game. So we already imported 3D models in the past. And I remember somewhere there where it was, I think was the mono game rollback. I could be wrong. I remember it's just, started jumping, doing the 3D models. Then we said stop. And then, am I remembering correctly that Veldred came after mono game?
Yes, Veldred came after.
And then we started saying, hey, who made that Normandy map anyway that we love so much? And thanks to Grandy, we managed to get a hold of Influx, and he made the boonies. Then there was war and bullshit. We had to stop development for a while. That was the end of 2023. I think we kind of faded away for a while. And then in 2024, the refactoring? Yeah. No, we're going to discuss it in a second. So then we came back to things, and I think, can you just really explain, because it was never really properly understood to me. I wrote down 8 motherfucking months of refactoring, and I think it wasn't just 8 months of refactoring. Yeah, I just wrote it that way, but it wasn't just that. It was like,
it was refactoring and trying to figure out how to get the York tree into it. I got distracted. The whole war affected me more than I think we thought about, and I kind of lost sight of what I wanted the engine to be. And so I kept trying to figure out different approaches to making the perfect code base. I just got into that rabbit hole.
that's when he started noticing that I'm eyeing his carry weapon.
Yeah, and by the way, that's when I realized, near the end of that, I realized I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm actually hurting the people I'm working with, and I don't want to do that. So I took the stick out of my ass and then whacked myself over the head a few times with it, and I just did what needed to be done.
And it worked.
And I said, fuck it, looks good, doesn't look good, it needs to work. And it works.
Yeah, and then the Octree just suddenly worked, which was great. Performance checks, we saw that you added the 256-bit color support.
Yeah, by the way, we couldn't have done that adding and removing voxels without the Octree and without the concept of having a voxel engine.
Yeah, it's not just for, just for show. It was the reason the engine was...
But it could have taken less time.
But wasn't that the main reason when I because I remember asking you, listen, we can do this in Unity if you want, but there was something with the voxels in particular.
Unity, I don't know if Unity would have made things easier, because we still would have had to write all of those things into Unity
And pay them.
with the way that Unity works, and then pay them. But that's not even the point. In the end, I wanted to move away from Unity. I still think it's the right decision.
I agree.
The mistakes I've done along the way,
And we'll make more.
we'll make more, but not on this scale.
Not on this scale.
We'll make more. But I think it is to the benefit of the industry and the benefit of programmers in general to move away and try to at least figure out how to make your games without a game engine. Even monogame, and I love monogame as a framework, it's not really a game engine. Go and write your own. The game driver that we're using in Want to Build has a lot of similarities to the monogame game object. It has some specific things for us that we need and stuff, but go write your own. Figure out why the decisions that Unity made were made.
And it's also, this is important because John Carmack discussed this when talking about just technology and game engines in general. When you use Unity and you use other proprietary game engines, they've already answered the questions. How do you render this? What's a 3D object? What's the physics? Just because they chose an answer doesn't mean it's the answer. There's plenty of answers. There's plenty of ways to develop a game like Born to Build. There's plenty of ways to develop an engine like Unity. But when you try and create a product that's very specific, because I think we're in a unique position because we have played Ace of Spades. That is kind of our guiding star. When you make something more generic, like these engines will need to encompass a lot of different creatives, a lot of different positions, support hundreds of developers. There's always going to be restrictions and certain paths you have to take. Same for us. Once you commit to a path, that's the game feel we have right now. That's going to be the game feel for our engine, for the way that Born to Build is going to feel to players. Once you create that, I think for me, that's something very unique. I think gamers usually, we spend hours on these products. I can put you in an engine with the same assets, and you will probably be able just to feel if it's Source engine, if it's Unreal, if it's Unity. There is something about the way these engines operate, even if you use some of the
Because
assets.
you're right. They've answered the question of what a renderer looks like. And while, for example, Unity does let you create your own renders, 99.9% of people use the built-in ones. And they have, the texture pop-ups for Unreal and the sheen you get on each texture, it's very Unreal. It's a very Unreal engine kind of look. Unity has its own lighting system quirks, and the Unity's UI is very noticeable Unity. Unless they do a lot of work to hide it, but most of the time it's not. It's very, very obvious that it's Unity.
I mean, we're banking on the fact, and I feel it. I see it in comments, I see it in other development stories, that when players feel the copy-paste nature of a lot of products, the safe way that the mainstream industry is currently operating, for me, it's already, I watch Gamescom, I watch the events. If it's not indie, I honestly cannot tell half the games apart, seriously. And it's not the game engine's fault. It's just the studios and the big, the budget. They're probably cutting the budgets, cutting the deadlines. Make me another Assassin's Creed, put it in Japan and ship it within 2 years. You know what I mean? So it's things become more safe. And when that happens, how in the hell can you justify making a game like this, okay, based on something that was successful, that Jagex bought an IP for, that was successful, 12 years, 15 years ago? You know what I mean? How would you justify this to an investor, what we're doing now? It's impossible. You have to be passionate. You have to be...
It's very difficult. I don't know if it's impossible. It is definitely very difficult. Once more features are added, and this week we're going to add more features, once we concentrate on the product, it's easier to run forward. And
it's fun to see it coalescing. And I see now we're close to, we'll get back to the timeline because we're right at the end. In 2025, you can see suddenly we have the digging and building that's being incorporated. We suddenly have the player movement, jump, fall, all climb, voxels as well.
The auto climb is funny. I enjoyed implementing it. And
I'm still not sure if I want it even.
Yeah, I think I've given you a flag for it, right?
The flag is in the UI, but it doesn't. It
doesn't work?
I haven't tested it.
You should. I think it works.
So what I'm seeing moving forward, and again, this is very general terms, but the way I see it now, we're right at the area of the export builds.
Yeah. So what I think we're gonna do now, it's what we really need to do in order to make this game buildable and then internally tested outside of the editor is finish the collisions for the physics. I've taken a detour because there's only so many collision equations I can write in a few weeks, and I just want to get back to some gameplay. So weapon scripting for the equipment, we're going to have the colliders, then we're going to finalize the whole concept of outside build, and that's it. Those three things would make a playable game.
You have to understand that when a game is playable, it doesn't mean that it's ready to ship, even not for alpha, because if you don't have audio or even basic UI,
True.
Or let's be honest, networking for a multiplayer game, which is, I think for me, that's my biggest fear. Again, people have been playing multiplayer games since the late 90s or mid 90s, even before that, the people have been able to do it. It's not an impossible task, but I have a feeling that it's not gameplay. It's going to be...
No, it's not gameplay. It's part of the infrastructure. It's actually once we get there, after the basic UI, the audio and stuff, we need to add a system in between the game, the client side of things, and the server. So we'll need to create a server, which is an application that is born to build without any of the graphics, that knows how to actually listen to information that's streamed to it, make decisions about the information, and then stream it out. The other side, some of the things right now that the client makes decision of, we're going to have to add There's a software pattern called proxies. We're going to add the proxies, so it will look like the physics engine, and it will sort of work like the physics engine, but it's actually going to be a synchronized physics engine. So the physics engine implementation or arbiter is going to sit within the server, and that's what's going to be streaming out.
So is there like an existing library?
We're definitely using an existing library. I'm not writing UDP packets, and I'm not writing TCP. I'm not writing any of the actual sockets myself. It's like a networking library that gives all of the infrastructure for the networking out of the box. What we're going to be working on is customizing the engine to the library. So we'll need to figure out what information we're sending and what information the client's going to receive. So we're going to have to figure out, the first thing we're going to have to figure out, we're going to have to write a connection like a handshake. Once we have a handshake, we'll figure out how to stream the transforms. We have transforms. Every rig we've spoken about has a component called transform. Those transforms are going to actually they'll have a component that sends the information where the transform is back to the server, and the server is going to have to decide and sends back the information. Are you allowed to move forward or not? So you can't, in a multiplayer game, you can't let the client decide everything about the movement, because then people will cheat.
Movement itself in the level, the UI, the audio, basic audio. But are we in a position, that's what I'm feeling. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm feeling like we're seeing for the first time, I'm not calling it a finish line, the starting point of the alpha in a way.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever seen it before. It always felt like it's above the hill, it's above the next hill, it's above the next hill, and now I feel like with binoculars we can see it.
Yeah.
You know?
Look, we're on the hill. We can see it.
So it does help a lot for me, especially to push forward with the marketing and stuff, because while I can't commit to a date, at least I know the date exists.
Yeah,
and it's,
definitely.
And it's attainable and reachable. Still not as close as we hoped it would be, but it's better than not being even in the proximity of it.
Ups and downs, like any kind of.
True, but we're still here. That's
Right.
what counts.
Out of all the people that I worked with, and I worked with a lot of people over my career, I really like working with you.
Same for me. I want to kill you every week, but I'm still enjoying it. He's the most lovable motherfucker I've ever met, and that's the problem with him. He's so
I have a
tough.
feeling my wife kind of feels the same.
Yeah. But the thing is for me, and I think what always worked for us, is that because you enjoy what you do, and it so happens that what you enjoy doing gives me the option to work on what I've always wanted to work on, which is video games that are not, casual mobile gambling, whatever. The course correction we did from a previous project is the game itself is simpler, it's just running on a more complicated backend, because it needs an engine. I'm happy with where we are, and I'm excited. I'm really excited for the first time in a very long while. So thank you very much, soldiers, and we'll see you in the next one.
Catch you later.